Okay, welcome everybody. We're just gonna wait for a few more people to go ahead and show up. I'm Kat. I am going to be your presenter today, and I'm gonna take you on a little tour about the restoration at the Furtado Barn and Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve. So feel free to take a couple of minutes to get yourselves settled in, maybe finish up your dinner or keep snacking. It's fine. We're happy to have you here. Okay. So like I said, we're just gonna wait maybe a couple more minutes. Um, it's an opportunity for you to go ahead and get yourself a beverage or find a comfy chair. And then we'll get to talking about the Furtado Barn. It'll be exciting, I promise. And I just want to double check, and feel free to communicate with me through the Q&A. Let me know if you can hear me, first off. I'm using a new setup, and I just want to make sure you can hear me. The second thing is I've had issues before with little black boxes, like covering up parts of my presentation. Just let me know if something like that occurs, because I want you to be able to see it. And yeah, just go ahead, feel free, relax, and we'll get started in about a minute. Excellent. So I think we'll go ahead and get started now. Welcome, welcome. My name is Kat. I am the Volunteer Programs Coordinator with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. And I am here to take you on a little tour of the Furtado Barn restoration area. This restoration area is kind of a real gem, that it's a source of pride for our staff and our volunteers. This is something that we've worked on for the past several years, but in the last couple of years, we've had several volunteer groups be able to come out and help us with this. So it's a really, I think, inspiring story, and one that I'm really excited to share with you. Let's see. So before I can begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Open Space Authority works within lands that were originally stewarded by the Aswaswas, Chochenyo, Mutsun, and Tamayan-speaking peoples, and that today we are honored to partner with the Amamutsun tribal band and the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area in our shared work to protect and restore the environment and connect people to land. I do want to point out that this acknowledgement is really important for us today as we speak about the Furtado barn, because we are in the business of stewarding landscapes that have already been stewarded by generations of people prior to us. And we want to be able to connect the descendants of those peoples with these lands, as well as continue to connect with the current communities around the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're really excited to be able to have this partnership and to continue to grow in that work. I can also not even begin to start to talk about this process or project without thanking all of the different contributors to this project. There's I can't even begin to talk about all the different people, because that would be like the entire presentation. But first off, the entire Sierra Vista team, but most especially our leads and at Sierra Vista, like Andres Campusano, it's actually helped to start this restoration project. There's several field staff and the Sierra Vista team, like Rowan O'Brien. There's David Mock, our natural resources technician, who has been spearheading regular projects out there and been leads in sharing this space with people. There's also been the Xerces Society, who granted us a very generous plant grant to restore this restoration site. And then there's all of the, I want to say hundreds of volunteers who have been out there with us, removing invasive plants, clearing up eucalyptus, removing fence, all of these different things. We could not have come to this place today without all of those efforts. So I do want to shout out like all of the different people. I can't name you all specifically because, again, that would take up the full hour, but you're all very, very special in what you have contributed here. So to start this wonderful story, where am I talking about? Like, where are we talking about with the Furtado barn restoration area? So the Furtado barn restoration area, it's actually located at Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve. And if you've ever been to Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve, it is well known for its fantastic views of the entire San Francisco Bay Area. It is actually located in the east foothills of the Diablo Range, east of San Jose, and right above Alum Rock Park. Sierra Vista is amazing, not only for its views, but also because of the habitat that it encompasses. If you look a little bit at this bigger picture, you can see Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve, Alum Rock Park, and then the Furtado Barn Restoration Area is this little blue icon over here. It's tucked away in the canyon. And what's so remarkable about this is that there is a seasonal riparian area that comes through the restoration area and connects to Penitencia Creek, which is an important part of our local watershed, and it helps to nourish the neighborhoods of Alum Rock in East San Jose. So this is an incredibly important network, not just for habitat, but also for watershed protection, and also for recreation and for inspiring people towards the amazing biodiversity that the Diablo Range offers. This is just one little part of a huge, amazing span of biodiversity in the Diablo Range. And yes, You can't start this presentation without getting some great pictures from Sierra Vista looking out over the city. This is a little hazy. Just beyond these hills is basically East San Jose, and it's an amazing place to get to visit. Some things to know about the site and how it came to us. So, just as a background, Sierra Vista actually opened first off as a trail. Like, it didn't even open as a preserve until much later, but it opened as a trail as the Picardo Loop. And people would go hike the Picardo Loop from Alum Rock. That opened in 2001. So over 20 years ago, basically. And in 2011, Sierra Vista actually opened up their staging area plus 6 more miles of trail. And that's because we were able to accumulate more property and build more trail, including the Aquila Loop, which is on the very top of Sierra Vista, as well as the Calaveras Trail, which is what connects Sierra Vista staging area all the way down to the Furtado barn. But even prior to this place being an open space preserve, it was actually a vestige of the agricultural heritage of Santa Clara Valley. The Furtado barn hosted cattle ranching. It was also a dairy, and it still has a walnut orchard. It was in production years and years ago, but now there are remnant trees near the Furtado barn, and they are still very prolific during the fall. So just to give you an idea, this was an area that was heavily cultivated. It was used for cattle and for dairy cattle specifically. And then also they harvested lots of walnuts. And that kind of sets the stage for why we wanted to do restoration here. When we acquired the property, in those intervening years, we realized that those prior activities created a lot of disturbance to the local ecosystem, which meant that lots of invasive plants, so things like hemlock and mustard and thistles, were taking over the area because of that disturbance. They could get themselves established because of this heavy use. So we actually, there was some work done by a guy called Doug Turk. He's from Oregon State, and he wrote up a report that kind of gave us a blueprint for how we might begin to do restoration work. But really, the most important why for us in trying to restore this habitat is the wildlife that called this place home. Part of the Open Space Authority's mission is to protect open space for wildlife habitat. And so it was a no-brainer for us to pursue a project that enhances habitat for rare and incredible wildlife. Just a couple of shout outs here, especially about this slide. There's a lovely burrowing owl. And yes, we do get burrowing owls at Sierra Vista. I won't say specifically at Furtado, because I don't think that they quite like that habitat, but they do use nearby habitat. We have had frequent wildlife camera sightings of mountain lions. You can see this beautiful lion here, and they do frequent that area. They like the cover from the trees and the vegetation. We also have resident nesting red-tailed hawks in the eucalyptus trees. And so a very regular sighting for us and a regular treat for volunteers is getting to see the displays of the red-tailed hawks and sometimes getting a really good image of the babies in their nest. Thank you for Thanks to David Mock for that great photo. And then there's also other critters that use this spot. Like we have regular monarchs that visit the area. There's still actually milkweed that's native, that's been established in the area. And then there's also like my favorite thing to find when pulling weeds are slender salamanders, and you can see a little guy right up there. It's like my favorite thing to find. But yeah, we wanted to protect this space for wildlife habitat. And so we set about trying to figure out how we want to do this work. So this is what we were looking at beforehand. And this is before any staff have been able to get out there and really do significant work. And you can see that there's a forest of mustard behind the field here. There's something here. I believe that this is these are young mustard sprouts. That's kind of what it looks like to me in the bowl on top of this hill. There's also a huge forest of hemlock just behind this little riparian creek here. So as you can see, we had a lot of work ahead of us in terms of invasive species removal and reestablishment of native plants. The goal being, when you establish native plants, you're providing food for invertebrates that feed the higher levels in the food chain, such as birds and lizards and salamanders, which in turn feeds higher and higher levels of the ecosystem. So we knew that this spot was already frequented by lots of wildlife, and we wanted to make it better. So we had a few goals that we set out with to try to make this happen. And the biggest goal was to establish routine and long-term management to restore this riparian area to a state where native plants establish healthy communities, things like grasslands, like chaparral, and forests, and then make sure that invasive plants are 80 to 90% eradicated in the area. And I will say that through the efforts of staff and through volunteer work, we've gotten to about 75 to 80%. And we're currently tending the new plants from last year, as well as volunteer sprouts from seeds that we have been sowing in these plots. So it's really exciting time because we've seen a fantastic change in the effort over time. I also want to highlight this picture here is this is a photo of a tiger salamander, which is a rare and endangered species. This was not found at Furtado, but it was found at Sierra Vista. So, restoring places like Furtado could potentially benefit species such as endangered tiger salamanders. And now I'm going to talk to you about some of the technical stuff. And I don't expect anybody to remember this because quite honestly, it's hard enough for me to remember. But I'm just going to kind of give you an overview so you get an idea of the work that was done and is continuing to be done. So Um, we had the previous picture that showed the larger view of Sierra Vista open space. And this trail that comes up from the upper right, or upper left, I should say, and comes down here and then goes across, that is the Calaveras Fault Trail. And it kind of meanders around a riparian area that we're working to restore. So the riparian area is actually all the highlighted green. There's a little seasonal creek that comes down the hill here. It spills over into this area, which is more of a bowl shape. So we call that the bowl. So it spills over into that, and then it continues down this way into area 3, which is the saucer. That's the term that David Mock has given it. And then it continues down the hill and actually connects to Penitencia Creek way further down the hill. Area 1 is really interesting. Volunteers have never really worked in Area 1, but some important work has been done there in order to help restore that upper part of the watershed, and I'll get to talk about that in a little bit. Area 2 has had a bunch of work, and in fact, there's the bowl that's had a bunch of work done, and then this is what I call Hillside 2, because we actually very recently last year solarized this hillside. Area 3 has, in terms of restoration, been pretty well under control now. And this is an area where we've also done plantings. So this is where you might see plantings. And then area 4 is actually a very, it's a site where we've had a lot of volunteer work. This is where we did our first solarization project. It's basically a hillside that just gets full southern exposure almost all day. And before any restoration work had been done, it was basically a mustard field. So this, we did some solarization. We have also replanted it with grass seed. And then we have also done plantings here. And those plantings from the recent rains are doing wonderfully. So this is a very successful site. Well, we'll get to talking about all of the different things that we've done here in the next few slides. And I should tell you a little bit about the invasive species that we're working to get rid of. So I'm only using the common names in this. If you're interested in the Latin names, I could totally send you a list, but I don't feel like trying to remember those right now. So I am going to give you the common names. But so we have black mustard, which was, I think, the most common invasive at the site. And the reason why we wanted to get rid of it is it creates some very dense stands of monoculture. It also is allelopathic. I want you at home to sit there and repeat the word allelopathic, because what it means is that this plant puts out chemicals in the soil that can prevent any other seeds from sprouting. So it reduces competition with other species using this method. And so it's not great because it prevents native plants from coming in, and it creates a monoculture which is very limited in its usefulness for native wildlife. We also have another one here, tocalote, and that one's a really fun one to say, so feel free to say that one to yourself. Tocalote. And it's actually very similar to yellow star thistle, but not quite yellow star thistle. I'll get to talk about it a bit more later because it was like a secondary invasive that came into the site after we were doing work. So it's just kind of a reminder of how much, especially in intervening years, how much work needs to be done to keep restoration going. But that one's a really interesting one. And then we have poison hemlock, which doesn't offer anything of value for wildlife. It's very toxic. Hardly anything can eat it. Um, and it also produces these dense monoculture stands that can get even taller than me. I'm 5'5". So, you can get plants that are up to 7 feet tall. They're very big. And they shade out everything else. So that's another one that is really important for us to remove. And then the last one, which I would say has been common, but not nearly as common as the hemlock or the mustard, has been bull thistle. And it also produces dense stands that have very limited use for the invertebrates and the birds and other wildlife. It's also mean. Like, trying to yank out bull thistle is really hard. So it's not my favorite one. And I like to try to get after bull thistle before it gets big, because then at that point it's kind of mean. So these were actually some of the first efforts done by staff. And I want to say 2011 and afterwards, when this preserve became open to the public, that's really when staff began doing some serious efforts at Furtado to do restoration. And they can only get at it a bit at a time. They can only take off small bites because at that time, Sierra Vista had a very small crew, a very tight-knit crew. And so wanted to be able to accomplish things, but also not overwhelm the staff because there was a lot of invasive plants out there. So there are things done like mowing and reseeding. So you can see here, there's some efforts made by staff to clear areas of weeds and then reseed them. And then this is actually a picture of the bowl. And you can see these new green sprouts. Those are native grass seeds, like little baby native grasses that are coming in. You would not have seen it earlier in the season because earlier in the season it would have blended in with all of this yellow stuff, which is all annual non-native grasses. But yeah, so we were seeing some success with the Sierra Vista crew. The other thing that I don't have a picture of, but that was also really important, was Sierra Vista staff early on worked in the Area 1, which was up above Furtado. And they actually, they cleared out a whole bunch of mustard out of that seasonal stream and replanted it with willow sticks. So those willow sticks took root and started to grow. And now when you hike along the Calaveras Fault Trail and you cross that little seasonal stream, you are overtowered by these arroyo willows, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. So I'm sad to not have a picture of it, of them doing the work, but I heard that it was kind of crazy because there were a lot of ticks. So maybe they were a bit distracted to get pictures of that. But so we knew that we could not do this work without some serious long-term invested efforts with large numbers of people, with larger numbers of people. There's only so much that field staff could do. And ultimately, like opening this project up would give us long-term benefits. So in April of 2021, we actually started bringing out crews of people, usually between like 8 and 15, to come out and do weeding out at Furtado. And this was fantastic, I think. There was a bit of a challenge in getting people to the site. As you could tell from that map picture, like the only trail access is through Calavera Spalt Trail. And we're not going to make people hike 2 to 3 miles down from the Sierra Vista staging area and then do work and then hike back. That's a lot. So we were able to get permission from Alum Rock Park to park people or park some people at Alum Rock and caravan up Falls Road, which is owned by the city of San Jose, and access the site through there. I will note that it is not open to the public, and currently Alum Rock Park is almost totally closed, I think. So it's not recommended to go hiking up there. However, when we are able to start staging there again, you could caravan with us and you could come help and work at the Furtado barn. So the first efforts were actually made in that saucer, which was area 3 in the middle. It's kind of between 2 groves of eucalyptus trees. We were both cleaning up like dead stalks, trying to clear the area so that we could get a sense of where the new growth was going to be, and then also clearing any new growth of weeds. The priority was removing black mustard, hemlock, bull thistle, and we continued doing that in spring 2021 through the summer. And then we tried some innovative and really fun techniques with volunteers. So on the left, we actually got to do a solarization project on hillside number 1, which is actually area number 4. And then on the, I want to say the right-hand side here is actually, we did the same thing, but on area 2, which is basically hillside number 2. So solarization, what is it? It's basically you're clearing an area to near bare mineral soil as much as you can. We got to dig trenches like you see up here in this upper corner here. And then we're laying clear plastic tarping over the soil. We're tucking in the corners, we're tucking in the edges to fit into the groove here, and then covering it up so then that way the wind doesn't take it. And we rolled out, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the number, but we rolled out a lot of plastic on that area. And the idea behind covering it with plastic is to actually heat up the soil underneath. It can heat up to 6 inches of soil underneath and get it up to a temperature of about 115 degrees. You want 115 degrees because that is the temperature at which it will kill the seed bank. So this is a nuclear option. We could continue over the years of just pulling mustard and hemlock and other kinds of weeds in this area. We could keep doing it and doing a lot of it, or we can try to, reduce the seed bank so then we have a clear slate, a clean slate for restoration. And so the plastic stays on the soil for 2 weeks. And I think in this time frame, that was like late September, or maybe actually early September, late August. So it was very, very hot. And then on the left-hand side, or on the right-hand side, sorry, um, that also was, we did that exactly the same. So it was a little tricky, I think, with the second hillside because there was some shade coming in from the eucalyptus every morning. But once the sun came back through this area, it got really, really hot. So afterwards, we were actually able to see the weed growth afterwards, like in the spring. And there was very, very significant difference in the amount of mustard and hemlock and things that were sprouting. Like there was a literal line between where the plastic had been and where the plastic wasn't. So overall, this method was a huge success and helped us in beating back, the invasive weeds so that we could actually start filling the vacuum with native plants. And this is the fun part, is when we actually get to come back in and reseed. So we did reseeding efforts in several places. We reseeded the first hillside, which is area 4. So after we pulled the plastic off, we planted an erosion mix of native grass seed and also native wildflowers. And we would, after we did that, we would cover it up with straw to help hopefully prevent predation from birds. I'm not sure how well that worked, but also to kind of allow that the seeds to get into the dirt and be covered, and also to kind of lock in moisture with the rains. So overall, I will say that those efforts were also very successful. We reseeded both the first hillside in the first year, that was 2021. We reseeded the second hillside, which is the pictures that you see here. This is area 2. And then we also did like a little bit of reseeding in the bowl in year 1. And in that case, I will say there were lots of phacelia that actually came up from that, and that was amazing. And so, yep, we replanted, and then in year 2, in 2022, we came back out, and there were a couple of surprises. First off, I will say the saucer, which is this area that you see in here, plus volunteers. It was actually pretty easy to get rid of invasive weeds here. The only thing I think was a lot of hemlock was trying to hide in amongst the coyote brush. And I think that's kind of surprising because I don't think hemlock likes to be shaded out too much. But we were able to remove all of that. And as you can see, made lots of piles of decomposing weeds. And then the other interesting thing was after we did that whole solarization at Hillside 1, it seems that we got rid of a ton of the mustard, which is important because the mustard prevents anything else from growing. But in its place came this other invasive called tocolote. And so that's why tocolote kind of became another, target for us because it was coming in and taking over one of our restoration areas at the first hillside, area 4. Luckily, I got a wonderful corporate group from Offero, and they came out and helped us weed that area. And that was fantastic because we hardly have any tokolote in that spot now. It seems to have been like a blip, but we're there to help prevent the further spread of it. And while we did a lot of invasive plant removal efforts at Furtado, I will say that there was also significant effort made to remove eucalyptus as well as redundant fencing. There's a fence that actually runs from around the barn and kind of goes across or separates the riparian area and the orchard. And it was making it difficult for field staff to access the site with trucks. It was also it's very redundant because cattle were already excluded from this area, so it didn't make sense to have another fence. So, and last year we actually worked to remove that fence, and you can see pictures of that there. In 2021, there was significant effort to also remove eucalyptus stuff from around the restoration area. And that's because the barn has two distinct groves of eucalyptus. There's one above the barn, and then there's one kind of behind the barn. And eucalyptus is also an invasive plant. However, it is very expensive and difficult to remove, especially once they get this big. The not so good thing about eucalyptus is that it is also allelopathic. So any of the duff, all the material that you see behind these awesome people, all of that leaches chemicals into the soil that could prevent native plants from growing. So we worked to remove a lot of that duff. And I think we removed about 4 or 5 dump trailers worth of eucalyptus stuff. And then I think in the wintertime, that's when our lovely field staff got themselves a chipper and they chipped the rest of it. So that material could be used for pathways. It could be used for particular areas where we don't want weeds or plant material to grow, but we're also removing it from around the grove so it's not affecting the restoration area. Also, the side benefit is, of course, eucalyptus is very flammable, and we wanted to remove that duff in case of fire. Helping to remove that means that there's less of a chance for fire to get up into the canopy and therefore also endanger structures like the Furtado barn. It won't prevent it in all cases, but it is what we can do at this point until maybe someday we can actually remove some of those trees. And this is the high point for us, is getting to work with you all in replanting the native plants from the Xerces Society. So we actually applied for and then received a grant from the Xerces Society. Now, the Xerces Society is a really cool nonprofit international organization. They work to protect biodiversity and habitat, especially for invertebrates. So they love the butterflies, the bumblebees, all of the cool insects that live in our lives and are also the basic building blocks of our food chain. So their work to grant native plants means that they are providing food for invertebrates that can then feed these higher levels in the food chain. So the Xerces Society, they do amazing work, and I would totally check them out if I were you. So we were granted about 1,500 plants from the Xerces Society, as a part of their pollinator habitat restoration program. And volunteers actually they came out and they helped plant these little plant pugs. They were only like this big, in the bowl, the saucer, and hillside 1, which was the first hillside that was solarized. They came out over the span of several weekends and weekdays. Um, and luckily we didn't have too many like rain days, I think. I think we had like a pretty sunny November, which was wonderful. And then the Xerces Society also granted us native grass seed to also disperse in the restoration area. Just some examples, by the way. We had things like goldenrod, burr marigold, California aster. What else? 3 different types of milkweed, including showy milkweed, narrowleaf milkweed, and California milkweed. We got coyote mint, which is a personal favorite, California fuchsia, and phacelia. Oh my gosh. The phacelia, I think, is the winner because right now they're doing like super, super well. So, yeah, there was a lot of different native plants. They chose native plants depending on how wet or dry, how close to the riparian area, how far away from the riparian area these plants would be. And so we could plant them in an appropriate area so they would have the best chance of taking off. And then the rains came. So the rains came. We had atmospheric river after snowstorms. And all kinds of things happened during the winter. And it was kind of a blessing. It was definitely a blessing because that meant that we could rely on Mother Nature to nourish these new plantings and make sure that they had enough water to get started. However, it also prevented access to the site. I mentioned earlier that Alum Rock Park was closed earlier this year. They are still closed to cars, but I think you can walk in now. If you want to walk in or bike in, you can go to Alum Rock. But yeah, the fact that you can't drive in means that we still can't access we can't access the Furtado barn through Alum Rock. We've got to now shuttle from Sierra Vista staging, which is an adventure in and of itself, I think. It's gonna be a fun year, I think. It also meant that we actually needed to cancel, like the inclement weather actually canceled our February workday because it was snowing. So even though we had lots of challenges, we were able to get back out there this last March, the very end of March, and I'd say a large number of our plantings have succeeded and are growing. In this upper right-hand corner here, we got some showy milkweed starting to come up. When we planted the showy milkweed, it wasn't even like a lot, like it didn't look alive because it was dormant, and now it's coming back. We also have a beautiful example of coyote mint and lots of lovely faces. We had a full group come out with us in March. So very, very stoked. It's been very awesome. And yeah, and the work continues. So I highly recommend, if you want to get out and get your hands in the earth and do some restoration with us, you can learn more. There's actually a couple of articles that were put out by the authority. A year at Furtado Barn from ruin to restoration. I would love it people check those out because I think that they're very well written and explain the different phases of restoration that we've been through. You can also join us. So we actually have projects every single month, except for January, usually in December, because the weather's so unpredictable during those months. We usually don't. Um, but February through November, we have projects. The next project date is going to be April 29th, and it's going to be, you can find it through Eventbrite and on our event page. We will be meeting at the Sierra Vista staging area and carpooling from there. We are going to be skipping May this year. There's some timing constraints. There's a lot of other things happening. Mayani Yakma happening, that kind of thing. So we will be returning to the site in June. And then I would highly recommend that you watch out for new projects on our event calendar or email me directly. If you really want to get in on this project, you want to come out and see it and that kind of thing, like just email me. We'd love to have you come and help us. Lastly, I would highly recommend that you come and visit the Furtado barn. As I mentioned before, it is a 2 to 3 mile hike down from Sierra Vista staging. I don't even think it's that long because it takes me about 40 minutes to hike it. But you hike down from Sierra Vista staging, you can get to the Furtado barn pretty quick. And you can kind of scope out and look at the area and see what's happening. We love for people to see all of the native plants that are starting to come back around the Furtado barn. Even right across the Furtado barn, there's some lovely sticky monkey flower that's starting to bloom. So, it's definitely worth coming to visit and appreciate. But yeah, I think I am ready for questions. If people have questions, if people have anything to say about their efforts, yeah, I'm just super excited to get to share this. This is an amazing place to be, and it wouldn't be it without the community and without the efforts that all of my volunteers have made, and all of the people who have contributed. So it's really special. Do I have any questions? Any comments? Anything else? I don't see anything. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Is anybody out there? I don't see anything in the Q&A. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. And I really appreciate the attention that you gave to this. I recommend that you come and join us at a Furtado Barn event in the near future. We will have them throughout the rest of this year, and we're definitely going to need the help to continue maintaining the areas around the plantings and see these new baby plants thrive. So anyway, I hope y'all have a good evening, and thank you. Bye.